well, if we're making $130,000, surely our net worth is huge. So I started to calculate what that meant. Assets on one side, liabilities on the other. I quickly learned by the time we were married, we had a negative $50,000 net worth between the debts that I had and the no assets really that we really had accumulated at that point between my wife and I. And so it was sort of a moment right then when we started to think, okay, we're going to bring children into this world. We're not just living for today. We're not just living for ourselves. We got a future to plan for. What can we do to start making some improvements? I like the debt-free movement. I like the FIRE movement. I like the mortgage-free movement. I sort of just mushed them all together into this whatever we've done over the past 15 years of our marriage. But yes, I really liked the idea of becoming mortgage-free. And a lot of it, I'll be honest with you, was less about math and more about the emotional feelings that I had from my first bout of home ownership. And I really didn't like it. I really didn't like feeling underwater or like I was constantly trying to figure out how to feel comfortable in my home. I wanted to feel like I owned it. I define CUtFI as the point in which you can slow down or pause contributions to your retirement and still reach your ultimate FIRE number or retirement number. So for us, at 40 years old, we got to about $500,000 in retirement accounts. That's 401ks, IRAs, Roth IRAs, even HSAs if you're investing, depending on how you're doing it. And without any further contributions, that would take us to well over our FIRE number by age 60, which for us, that was an epiphany.
Welcome to Catching Up to FI, a podcast on mindset, money, and life for late starters of any age on their journey to financial independence. I'm Bill, and I'm a late starter.
I'm Jackie, and I'm also a late starter, and we're your host. We're here to help you on your journey to financial independence, no matter where you're starting.
We're going to talk to experts, other late starters, and explore topics related to our mission.
Join us as we catch up to FI together.
Hello, and welcome back to Catching Up to FI. We're talking about marriage, family, kids, and money with Andy Hill today. Exciting stuff because it's important. FI isn't just about single player FI, dual income, no kids FI. How do you do FI with kids? All right, Jackie, and let's introduce our guest so people understand who Andy Hill is.
Yeah, we're so excited to have him with us today. So Andy Hill is an award-winning blogger, podcaster, and family finance coach behind Marriage, Kids, and Money. The platform is dedicated to helping families build wealth and happiness. With over 400 episodes and counting, the podcast has been awarded Best Family Finance Content by the Plutus Foundation for 2 years in a row, and he got Content Creator of the Year. The show focuses on everything from how to achieve financial independence to how to help your kids become future millionaires who are generous. And we're going to talk a lot more about that. Now, Andy holds the accredited financial counselor credential, and his advice on personal finance and his experience have been featured in major media outlets like CNBC, Forbes, MarketWatch, Kiplinger's, and NBC News. He's been everywhere. So with millions of podcast downloads and video views, Andy's message of family financial empowerment has resonated with listeners, readers, and viewers across the world. Andy and his wife, Nicole, have 2 kids. They started out their money journey with $50,000 in debt and paid it off in less than a year. In the next 10 years, they paid off their mortgage and built their net worth to over $1 million. Wow. So when he's not talking about money, he enjoys being a soccer dad, singing karaoke with his wife, and relaxing on a hammock. Man, you got the balance, Andy. Welcome to Catching Up to FI.
Thank you for that nice introduction, and thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
I can't imagine that you have enough time to relax on your hammock. I mean, you are known for your energy, your positivity, and
Oh.
the overwhelming amount of content that you put out there. So I don't know how you find time to relax.
I think it's because of those hammock rests I'm able to
Yeah.
do that, Bill.
Yeah, and that's why I say, man, he's got the balance. I'm like, I'm always like with my hair on fire, trying to do this and do that. We could take a lot of notes from him. But you know what I'm interested in, Andy? So you're a karaoke lover. So am I.
yeah,
What's your
yeah.
favorite karaoke song?
I like to do some Billy Joel, which is a lot of fun. You have to pick the karaoke songs that sort of fit your voice ability, because I've tried to do some ones that are a little higher in my octave, and I always just sound a little goofy. So I like a Billy Joel. I like to do some nice 90s music. I do some Oasis tunes, things like that. Things that bring me back to like high school. I have a lot of fun. And then I have my friends over, and then they all sing along with me. It's always good ones to do when you could do like sing along ones, because everybody joins in the fun.
Yeah, that is my trick. I always try to do that. And we're going to be seeing you at FinCon this year. So I'm about to pull out those songs and say, Andy.
I'm ready. I've got a list on my phone. I'll be ready to go, man. Absolutely.
Well, it's,
Awesome.
it's good for public speaking, which you do a lot of. And I have that imposter syndrome and absolutely no voice. I refer to myself as the worst singer in the world, and my wife might be the second worst singer in the world. It would take a few drinks for me to get up on stage.
The liquid courage can help, absolutely. And you know what? If you're singing along with somebody else and they're having a good time, that's what it's all about.
Yeah, we'll have to get a few drinks in him, I guess.
I'm down.
So we're going to get him
Let's
singing
help
too.
Bill. Let's do it.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's important to understand where you came from. Well, we mentioned some of the details in the intro, but you haven't, because you're a late starter, and like a lot of late starters, you kind of started in your 30s. And we have a significant portion of our audience that are in 30 somethings that start late, and they feel like, oh, I'm behind. I didn't do this in my 20s, like all the avatars of people, the Mr. Money mustaches and all this that started in their 20s, get it right, and retire in their early 30s. So as far as your late start, take us through your money journey and why that happened. You have a few things with regards to money mistakes and blunders. And one thing I like is you bought a 4-ring car, but you only could afford 1 ring.
That's right.
Tell us what you mean by that and all those things that happen in your 20s that caused a late start.
Sure, yeah. I think the quick summary of my 20s is that I loved living at home with my parents, and they had a nice lifestyle. And then I graduated from college, and then I just sort of continued their lifestyle, but I didn't have the income to support it. They're doing well with their multi-income, and my dad's got a pension all set up from working in the corporate America. Me, I graduate from college. I start off making like $28,000, but I'm spending double that. I get a house. I start borrowing from my home equity line of credit. I lease luxury cars that I can't afford. I continue to party like I'm in college with the concerts and going out with friends, but again, don't have the money to support it. I go to get my MBA for my master's program, don't really understand the process of borrowing $30,000 of student loans, thinking that it's free money. I start using that money for, again, entertainment. Eventually, I use some of it to help buy my wife's engagement ring. I had no clue where this money, but it was free. Hey, there's money here. It's in my account now. I can use it for whatever I want. So I just started sort of piling up the debt between my home equity line of credit. Luckily, I didn't get into too much of a credit card mistake or mess. And for me, it was the home equity line of credit and then borrowing from my student loans and not really understanding where it was. Eventually, I meet my wife and we combine forces, and all of a sudden we have doubled our income, which is great. I was making like $60,000 by the time we got together. She was making like $70,000. So all of a sudden we're making $130,000. This is going to be great. We're combining forces, and surely the fact that we're making this money is just going to mean that we're rich. I was watching Susie Orman around that time frame, and Susie Orman did this. I forgot what the segment was called, but she talked about net worth a lot. Net worth, and I'm like, well, if we're making $130,000, surely our net worth is huge. So I started to calculate what that meant. Assets on one side, liabilities on the other. I quickly learned by the time we were married, we had a negative $50,000 net worth between the debts that I had and the no assets really that we really had accumulated at that point between my wife and I. And so it was sort of a moment right then when we started to think, okay, we're going to bring children into this world. We're not just living for today. We're not just living for ourselves. We got a future to plan for. What can we do to start making some improvements? And that's when we really started to think about what can we do to move forward to build our wealth. I owned a home at that time that was actually, I owed more on it than it was valued. It was a really tough time in Metro Detroit where the real estate values sort of plummeted during that Great Recession time, and we were still coming out of it after I got married, and it trickled on for a couple of years. So it's one of those points where I'm like, I'm feeling owned by my home. I'm spending way more than I have, and according to Susie Orman, I got a negative net worth. So where can we go from here? That's kind of where our journey started.
So you were in college when you got married, you and your wife.
Well, I was finishing my master's program, yes.
Yeah, so I'm just curious about, like, when you got together, were your money habits similar? Like, did you have a similar upbringing and thoughts around money, or was that different and you kind of had to work on that a little bit?
I was definitely influenced when I was growing up by my mother and my father in two very different ways. My mom was more frugal. She taught me how to invest, taught me how to save, things like that. And my dad was a very entrepreneurial guy and wanted to grow your career, grow your wealth, things like that, grow your income. So I learned a lot from both of them. I think I just forgot it all in my 20s because I was just having such a good time. But then when you come together with your spouse and you start to buckle down, you'd be like, all right, what are the things that I remember that my parents taught me that I can actually start to move forward on? Now, my wife really didn't come into the marriage with much debt at all. She had a car lease that she turned into a loan when the lease finished, so it ended up being like a $20,000 car loan. But outside of that, she had that debt, and that's really the only thing that we were dealing with on her side. That being said, we both enjoyed our 20s, spent a lot of money, and didn't really bring any assets really into the relationship. So we were kind of starting from zero together, but it was a good starting place because we were committed to each other and committed to our future.
So your wake-up call was kids or marriage or both?
I would say, honestly, it was a realization of our financial situation when we realized that we were going to be parents. It was one of those things where it just sort of popped in my brain after we saw the pregnancy slip that says, hey, in a certain period of time, you're going to be a parent here, pal. And then something clicked in my brain, and I've actually done some research on this, that this is not uncommon for parents, especially for dads, to go into that sort of financial preparation mode. What can I do to protect my family? Right when you learn you're going to be a parent, or right when you see your daughter born for the first moment or son born, you kind of flip that switch. And everybody needs that moment, right? To make a switch into their situation where they're trying to build financial freedom or financial independence for their family. And my daughter Zoe became that moment for me.
So a pregnancy test did it. I've never heard that one. That's a great one. Well, it didn't happen for me till I turned 50 years later. And so the pregnancy test was like, we'll just manage this. And we got into the funnel without knowing how to partition our paycheck, save first. And when you don't get that right on the front end, you get caught up in the whirlwind, and time can go by so fast before you really wake up. And a lot of our audience does have that same story. So wake-up calls are important, but the fact that yours was a pregnancy test, that's a first for me.
Absolutely. And we double-checked on the pregnancy test. We did it 3 times, so it was a for sure thing. So I'm like, okay, this is real.
Well, you mentioned your house, and you're very open about how you made some big house blunders. And I did the same thing.
Yeah.
Can you take us through your house journey and what you did that sort of set you back? Because I was upside down in my house too, but what was that progression of events? Because it ended up turning into getting gazelle intense on paying it off, which is counterintuitive to a lot of what FI says. So that's a lot of questions, but take us through your house blunders first.
Sure. Yeah. I graduated from my undergrad and I had saved up enough for a 10% down payment on a home. And I was really proud about that. I had worked in high school and college. I saved a lot. I even owned some mutual funds in my teens and my 20s that helped me to put enough, I think it was about $20,000 down on my $200,000 house. So this was a good 10% down. I was super, super happy about that. What I quickly didn't realize was there are a lot of other expenses in a home outside of being able to afford the mortgage payment. And I don't know if you remember that time. It was like 2004-ish, before the Great Recession. They were kind of handing these mortgages out like candy. Like, yeah, you can afford the payments. You're going to be good. What I learned quickly as a 22-year-old, 23-year-old is that there are going to be repairs that you're going to have to pay for. There are going to be utilities that you're going to have to pay for. There are going to be fixes to the home that you never even thought of, a repair of a roof that's going to come up in the next little while. Your AC unit's going to go. You're going to have to furnish this place. All these little things started to add up, and I'm like, whoa, this American dream or this idea of home ownership that I put out there as like winning, I started to feel like I was losing. I really felt like this home owned me really fast. And so I worked at that. I said, okay, well, if I've got this house and I need to make some more money, I better start bringing in some roommates. So I brought in a one roommate, and that worked out because the guy ended up being a good friend of mine for a really long time. I brought in another roommate, and okay, this is starting to be a little bit more palatable, where I'm able to afford it a little bit more because I've got a little bit more income coming in to help me pay for the mortgage. That being said, I was there for 10 years, and when I sold it, I probably made out maybe $20,000, $30,000 on the actual sale. I bought it for $200,000, probably sold it for like $220,000, $230,000. I guarantee you that I put more than $20,000 or $30,000 into that house, and that was a decade of home ownership. So my first bout of this felt like stress, felt like a bad investment, felt like a lot more work than I wanted to do in my 20s. There were periods of time in my 20s where I'm like, hey, I've got a job opportunity to move this city or go over here. I was stuck in this home, and I didn't want to feel stuck. I wanted to feel like home ownership would be a freeing moment in my life, or somewhere where I felt proud of that ownership. So when my wife and I decided to move off of the bachelor pad and move into the family home after that, I got really excited about, okay, if we're going to do this again, we're going to do it a whole nother way. And for me, that meant paying off the mortgage as fast as possible.
And why did you do that? Because Jackie has not done that.
Yeah.
She's retired, and she uses her mortgage in some ways as leverage to be able to invest. I am in your camp because being debt-free is a very freeing experience. And you wanted to do this early. I mean, you really got intense about it. I think you had a 15-year mortgage. You paid it off in 10. It's kind of like the Dave Ramsey approach to mortgages. I don't know if that's where you got your influence or not, but this is not the mentality of the American consumer.
I hear you. Yeah. As far as mentalities or ways of thinking, I think I've adopted from all of the movements. I like the debt-free movement. I like the FIRE movement. I like the mortgage-free movement. I sort of just mushed them all together into this whatever we've done over the past 15 years of our marriage. But yes, I really liked the idea of becoming mortgage free. And a lot of it, I'll be honest with you, was less about math and more about the emotional feelings that I had from my first bout of home ownership. And I really didn't like it. I really didn't like feeling underwater, or like I was constantly trying to figure out how to feel comfortable in my home. I wanted to feel like I owned it. I wanted to feel like I could walk on the grass and say, this is my grass, this is my roof. And so a lot of it was psychological. A lot of it was emotional. That being said, a financial benefit of paying off our mortgage, which we were able to do in just about 5 years, a little under 5 years, was to be able to not have as many expenses in my life. So we had a certain income, and we brought in however much we brought in, and then our expenses were how much they were. But after we paid off our mortgage, it cut those expenses quite a bit. And that allowed us to make some emotional family decisions that were really great for us. My wife wanted to become a stay-at-home mom. This allowed for that. When we paid off all of our debt, paid off our mortgage, and eventually achieved CUtFI, we didn't really need to worry so much about those big milestones anymore. That decreased our expenses so much that we had the option to say, yeah, we can go to just one income in this house instead of two incomes. Or at times we went from 2 full incomes to 1.5 incomes, or eventually just one. And now my wife and I are in a position where we both have part-time incomes. So we've been able to flex this situation in our lives based on our growing family, our disdain for some of the places we've worked, our lack of interest in continuing in those industries, and our also positive interest in moving towards different career paths that felt more comfortable for us. So I feel like the mortgage, especially at a low percentage of whatever 2 or 3% that people have right now, can feel like that just is bonkers to want to pay off. But if you think about it as a post-CUtFI decision of, hey, now can I eliminate my low interest debt because that will allow me even more time freedom to choose the type of daily life that I want to have, that's where I think it could be a smart decision for a lot of people.
This show is sponsored by Boomer Benefits, one of the nation's leading family-owned Medicare brokers. Now, Bill, we all know that Medicare is so confusing. It's like alphabet soup out there.
Yeah, there's a lot of decisions to make, and there's a lot of mistakes that you can make in making those decisions. So if you're feeling lost trying to make the Medicare decision, you're not alone. Join the Boomer Benefits Medicare Q&A Facebook group, where they answer your Medicare questions 365 days a year.
Yeah, and inside that group, Bill, they've got over 90,000 members that is navigating Medicare, just like me and you will be doing, and they provide so much great education in that group for those approaching Medicare age or those already on Medicare.
Yeah, and we can share our experiences, ask questions, and stay up to date with the latest Medicare news shared by the Boomer Benefits team.
Join the Medicare Q&A with Boomer Benefits Facebook group today and let them help you make informed decisions about your Medicare coverage.
I'm going to go sign up right now because I got a lot more to learn, even though we recorded an episode with Danielle, the head of Boomer Benefits.
Oh, yeah, I'm headed over there right now, Bill. Yeah, I think, Andy, you make such a great point about it being a psychological decision. So Bill already called me out. I have retired. I retired early in 2019 with a mortgage, but I did think a lot about it. Like when you were explaining about your experience with the house that you had and something's always going wrong and you didn't expect to have these things. Well, the experiences that we have, that goes into our decision-making process. So it makes sense that psychologically it made you feel better to get rid of that mortgage. And some people might look more at the math and say, oh, gee, why would I get rid of it? And it's funny that there's this long-standing debate, and it's really not a debate. It really comes down to, do you sleep better at night by having your mortgage paid off? And another really good point that I think our listeners will probably get value from is the fact that you paying off your mortgage, or let's say any other type of debt, it really does lessen what your expenses are. So when you see people saying, like, I live off of about 40 to 45,000, a big part of that is because I almost have no debt. If you think about how many most people are putting towards debt, strike out that line item and your expenses, and to be able to maintain your life is much less.
How much would your annual expenses be if you didn't have your mortgage?
I did the math on that, of course. Now, you live in Michigan. I live right beneath you in Ohio.
Okay, yeah. Everybody take this with a grain of salt if you're on the East Coast or the West Coast, yeah.
So my mortgage is pretty low. I got a nice 4-bedroom home with a big backyard and all of that, okay? And my mortgage, principal, interest, taxes, and insurance is about $1,100 a month, okay? So when I did the math, I still got to keep in the taxes and the insurance, okay? So it came to roughly about $500 less I would be paying if I decided to, because I've had my mortgage for a long time, so that has a lot to do with it too. So if I were to pay off my house, I would still have about $500 a month I'd be paying for the things that were left. So it made a $500 a month difference. It didn't make enough of a difference for me to make the decision to say, I want to get rid of it. So I still have it. It's a really low interest rate. And with inflation like it is, we all love to anchor ourselves to things that confirm the decisions that we've made, that confirmation bias. So with interest rates the way that it is, I'm like, ooh, I'm making out.
Absolutely. You're feeling good with that super low interest rate. Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, it's just a list of pros and cons, and it really comes down to the psychological part, like you said.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, going to $39,000 of expenses per year would feel nice, but not too much more than your other goals that are going on right now.
I
Right,
look at it
right.
as a paid off house as a disability policy.
There you go.
If you have a job loss and you're living on 50%, and then all of a sudden, just like recently, my wife didn't work for 2 months or so, and we weren't dependent on her income, and the stress of a mortgage payment didn't come up. And so we could weather that storm a little bit better because we didn't have to stress about paying the mortgage or being house poor. So, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of reasons to do it. And I find that it's hard to stick to the math. Yeah, it's one thing theoretically to say, okay, I'm going to invest the difference and I'm going to see a 7-8% return and earn the gap of 5% over a 3% mortgage. But it's hard to do that. It can get sucked up into lifestyle inflation pretty quickly. And an example just recently for me with regards to math and emotion is just before this market dip. I had a syndicated investment exit and I had a lump sum of cash. And I wanted to get it back into a market to grow. And so I'm like, theoretically, I'm like, okay, let me dollar cost average this in 2 to 4 payments. But I got kind of itchy. I had this cash burning a hole in my pocket. And I'm like, no, and the math and the theory is, okay, you do 70% of the time, you do well with lump sum investing. I put in half, but then I'm like, let me put in the rest. Guess what? We had a 10% market correction. And I'm like, why didn't I stick to my plan? I let emotions carry the day. So
Yeah, you know what I asked him, Andy? I said, Bill, what does your investment policy statement say?
I didn't have a line item in my investment policy statement for windfalls. And this technically wasn't a windfall. It was in a syndicated real estate multifamily investment. So it had the risk of, say, investing in a single stock. So it had been in a risky asset. So it was a risk transfer. And luckily things are rebounding and I'm not losing sleep at it because I'm like, okay, we're long term. The short term's kind of painful here. But it's hard. You can have a plan, but sticking to it with some emotional basis to it can be really hard when the math is on your side.
I agree. I blame the news cycle on that one, Bill. There was way too much noise than needed to be.
Well, it was like everybody had an itchy trigger finger when they were like, everything's at an all-time high. When we get one set of bad news, sell.
Yeah, and Bill, the market is up about 3% today, and it was up the other day, the day before. So it is bouncing back very quickly. A year from now, you won't even realize we had this little pullback.
Well, we had this conversation. You said, yeah, it's going to bounce back. I said, I agree.
That's right.
This is not a big deal. It needed a correction. But anyway, that's my little story about math and emotion. And it comes back to the house decision. And Jackie, you're good at sticking to the math. I'm not as good at that. And if 80% of it's emotion, I need to balance it with the math. But emotion can carry the day for me, but you got to let the math avoid blunders. And if I had just waited, if the quote unquote windfall hadn't come in a week or two before the correction, I'd have bought the dip, right? Everybody's like, let's buy the dip. And it would have been a lot of fun. But I'm just like, okay, why couldn't I catch a break on this one? And a lot of it's luck and circumstance.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, Andy's done a great job setting that up. And that answers a lot of the question about where you are in terms of your finances now with the CUtFI.
Yeah.
So can you tell us a little bit about, well, I feel like it's relatively new that we got these different flavors of FI, like CUtFI, BaristaFi, and all that. So tell us what CUtFI is and what it means for you, and dive into your numbers a little bit, because
Sure.
you're sort of a great walking example, and I think our listeners could get a lot of value from understanding your approach.
Absolutely. Yeah, I define CUtFI as the point in which you can slow down or pause contributions to your retirement and still reach your ultimate FIRE number or retirement number. So for us, at 40 years old, we got to about $500,000 in retirement accounts. That's 401ks, IRAs, Roth IRAs, even HSAs if you're investing, depending on how you're doing it. And without any further contributions, that would take us to well over our FIRE number by age 60, which for us, that was an epiphany. Of course, nobody knows exactly what the market's going to do over the next 20 years. But if you look at conservative numbers like a 6% growth over those next 20 years, we felt very comfortable that we would hit our numbers based on what we're spending today without our kids kind of moving on and doing their own thing, and feeling very comfortable with where we are. So that was a nice moment when we kind of did those calculations, is sort of understanding what CUtFI could be or what it means. And that made us make some introspective decisions, being like, okay, well, could we slow down our retirement contributions? Because we'd been going pretty heavy for a while there. When we got married, we had that epiphany when Zoe was coming to the world. We started saving about 50%, 40 to 50% of our income. So that was going towards debt payoff. That was going towards investing for retirement. That was going towards paying off the mortgage, as you guys heard how we did that kind of fast. And then we got to a point where we had done all this work for a good decade, and we were making, just full transparency, during that 10-year period of time, we were making on average like $170,000 to $180,000 as a couple. So that helped. Obviously, more income, the bigger the shovel, you can make a lot more movements with that. So saving about half, 40%, half of that for a long period of time made a big improvement in our finances. So 10 years later, we've got about $500,000 in retirement accounts at 40. We see that with compound interest and a conservative growth, this could do pretty well for us in our retirement. So we asked ourselves, well, what if we just sort of pared that back a little bit? What if we stopped maxing out the contributions or doing everything that we needed to do in our 401k, our Roth IRA, or HSA? Wow, we could actually still get there and then some. And what would that mean for our finances today? Well, that would mean that I don't have to work full-time anymore, or my wife doesn't have to work full-time anymore. We could work less. We could spend more time taking care of our kids, making memories together. I've got aging parents. I would love to spend more time with them. Take care of my health a bit more. Instead of focusing on working the majority of my week, I could focus on living the majority of my week. And that became really exciting, that really exciting concept. And we've been sort of living that way, my wife and I, over the past 2 or 3 years. We're both working 20 to 30 hours a week now. And she transitioned into a new job industry where she's an esthetician. She worked in advertising and marketing for like 10, 15 years, and after a while hated it and decided to go back to beauty school and then get her esthetician license. And now she helps people feel better in their skin as an esthetician. And I've transitioned full-time to being a family finance coach. And I do that part-time now. It allows me to be there for the kids, take care of my health a little bit more, and enjoy more life.
Yeah, well, you might do that part-time, but it sure looks like you're doing it full-time, man. You got a multimedia platform, so whatever you're doing, it looks big.
I have some very, very nice people that help me to make it look great. So yes, I have some great partners. Absolutely.
Well, you mentioned CUtFI, and you have a CUtFI calculator on your website. It's relatively simple. I mean, I went back and calculated my CUtFI number because I was a late starter. And I found out that I'd be CUtFI because I'm like 58 going on 59. And you could say that I'm CUtFI, but we're based on our spend, we're not there. And everybody's spend is different. And so when I calculated it, you have to look at, and just to remind our audience, you look at your current age, so 58, 59. You look at your target retirement age. For me, 63. My wife, 64, 65. You look at your spending, which is a critical number. And then your current assets, that your investable assets, not including your house, obviously, because you can't eat your house. And then you look at some assumptions, like your investment growth rate. And you said a conservative assumption of 6%, and everybody can pick, I picked 7. That was my number. You can't pick 12 like Dave Ramsey. It just ain't going to happen. And then you need to assume an inflation rate, which I think in your calculator you use 3%. Now we've been seeing it differently, but we're working our way back. And then what's your safe withdrawal rate? And the fees, what are the costs that you're paying for this? And so there's really 8 numbers and easy to plug into your calculator. And my CUtFI was at 61. And we've already pared back and bought back time. I'm not burning the candle at both ends in my current, and it sort of extends our runway. And it's interesting to me that your runway is to 60. Do you have any desires to retire early? Is that part of your plan? I mean, it doesn't sound like it is right now.
I think this realization of CUtFI for me, Bill, has had me feeling, and maybe this is just justification, but I enjoy working. I enjoy doing work that I actually like for a portion of my week. So as long as I'm still relevant and useful and helpful in this community and serving people, I think that gives me great pride. Of course, I love being a dad, and I love being a great husband, and I love exercising and hanging out with my friends and being with my parents. But there's also a point in time where I'm like, I want to feel like I'm contributing to society and supporting. And for me, ideally, if I get to a point of working like Tuesday through Thursday, that'd be great. Or right now I'm working Monday through Thursday. I try to take three-day weekends, permanent 3-day weekends, which is great. So I can always have a Friday off and be there. But I enjoy working. So I don't know if I want to stop working. And I know that's a big debate in the fire community, what retirement really means. And everybody finds their own version of it. But I wouldn't say that I'm traditionally fire or traditionally retired or anything like that. But that's okay for me. And I think this realization of CUtFI could mean that for other people too. Oh, you don't have to hit 25X in order to just enjoy a more comfortable every day. Because I think I got to a point when I was really invested and interested in the fire movement where I'm like, I'm gonna buckle down like crazy and it's gonna get nuts in here for like 7 years. But then I'll be happy when I get to that rainbow on the other side. And then I realized, oh, I think my wife's going to divorce me if I keep at this, man. No joke. We went to marriage counseling. We had a lot of conversations about the intensity with which I despised what I was doing for a corporate career, and the stressful environment of being at home with toddlers during your free time and then not really having a lot of free time to do a lot of the things that you're interested in life. So it became a point where we had no time. We didn't really allocate the time for us to actually have important conversations together. So we needed that marriage counseling to actually set aside a physical hour for us to talk about these important things, about where we see us going as a couple, where we see my career going, how much runway do I really have to keep doing what I'm doing, and then for her as well, what does she want to be doing in the future with regard to her career and things like that. And those conversations, that 9 months we spent with our marriage counselor, were the best investment for our relationship, and it ended up being a great win for our marriage. Now 14 years later, we've been married happily. So
congratulations. Andy, as you're describing that, so I want to pick up on this piece about the work that you love. Now, when you were right out of college, you're just married. Did both of you guys work a corporate full-time 40 to 60-hour week job? So how did you make the shift from working that job that you guys wasn't too crazy about, the jobs that you had? How did you make the shift from that to doing something that you love? Because like you said, I think a lot of people, that attracts a lot of people to the whole FI movement. And that's why these flavors have come about, the CUtFI, because you needed to tweak it a little bit. And now you're in this wonderful place. So take me through a little bit about this job shift to where now you both work part-time at doing work that you absolutely love, that you don't want to retire from.
Yeah, we both got educated in communication, advertising, business management, things like that out of undergrad. We both went into that industry, advertising and marketing, and we did well. We did well for a period of time, and then after some time, it just weighs on you. You get to a point where you're like, same old client drama. It weighs on you. Business management changes. I've worked so hard to build this team up and I feel really proud of it. Okay, new management comes in. Yeah, you're not on that team anymore. You lose your team. You're going to be over there now. No control, right? So it was one of those points where I'm like, I don't think I could keep doing this. This is nuts. And the money was great, but we utilized it in a way to help create some sort of freedom. So at that point where I'm thinking, oh, I've only got a little bit of time here to go, I was really interested in rental real estate and using that as sort of my out. My wife and I went to go see some properties with some money we had saved up in just a high yield savings account, some cash. And we're like, all right, let's look into this. We started looking into it. We started looking at the homes that we could maybe put some money down on. And both of us just looked at each other and said, what are we doing? We don't want to be landlords. We're not interested in this. I don't want to deal with tenants. I don't want to deal with the situation. And that became a situation where we said, okay, now what? And my wife looked at me one day and she goes, you've been talking on that podcast and you've been helping people with their money on financial coaching. Why don't you just go for that full time? We've got all this money set aside in your high yield savings account now. Use that as just sort of like a bridge or a runway that gets you to a happier place with your career. And will it be tough? I'm sure it will be, but go for it. I trust you. You're a smart guy. And that was such a beautiful conversation, beautiful trusting moment that my wife had in me to go for it. And I was thankful for it. And we did. And so in January of 2020, I decided to leave my well-paying corporate career with benefits and leap into my entrepreneurship life. And for the first 2 months, it went really well. And then in March 2020, something happened in our country, in the world. And things went awry for the first year and a half of me trying to figure out what my entrepreneurship thing is. How am I making money supporting people with financial education and coaching? But I'm sure glad that I had that runway of money, because we probably only used maybe 30% of it. And the rest of it, after things started to pick up and grow, became treat money. We bought it. We bought a new to us car. We got the hot tub. She always wanted it. And we updated the furniture in our house. It became great. It became fun money. So it's almost like the money that I set aside, this sort of FU money in a high yield savings account, became my confidence bridge. Again, another emotional, psychological thing that gave me the confidence to say, even if I completely mess this up, even if a global pandemic comes through, we'll still be okay. And lo and behold, 4 years later, I've been doing this. I say full-time, but now I do it part-time. I do my business part-time, and everything's going great. We're happy to be spending more time with our family, spending more time with our kids, and making decent money. We live in the Midwest, like you said, Jackie. It doesn't take a ton here to be happy,
Right.
but we're happy living on between $6,000 and $7,000 a month as a family. And that does it well for us.
Well, that's a great thing. I mean, Andy, you bought back time with CUtFI, and you're living your best life, not working 40, 50, 60 hours a week. I don't know how you do what you do in 3 or 4 days a week. But anyway, you feel comfortable. Jackie, let's pause for a minute. And before we continue, let's share some words about one of this week's sponsors, Delete Me.
Yeah, the latest report from the Federal Trade Commission showed that in 2023, $10 billion was lost to consumer fraud, and $2.7 billion of that was lost to imposter scams.
Yeah, they've tried to scam me. They've scammed my mother. This is a real problem. So what do you do about it? Well, first off, just learning more about the tactics these scammers use can help us know what to look out for. But in a big way, I try to keep our family protected is to make sure that all of our personal information is removed from as many data broker websites as possible so that we're less enticing of a target.
Yeah, you'd be shocked at how many sites out there are sharing your address, phone number, birthday, email, and a lot more. But fortunately, you can get these data brokers to remove your information. But unfortunately, the process takes hours and hours to do it by yourself.
I know, because I tried to contact them, and only after spending 10 hours did I give up and start using Delete Me, our sponsor today. So take control of your data and keep your private life private by signing up for Delete Me. Now at a special discount for our listeners, just go to joindeleteme.com/catching up. That's joindeleteme.com/catching up. You'll find the link in our show notes. One of the things that you've created with your platform, and as a big part of it, is your generational wealth plan. You talk about 60-40, and I find this very interesting because a big part of the plan ends up being giving. But walk us through it and then take us on that journey to, and we'll talk about the giving piece.
Yeah, I would say a big part of our financial success as a couple has been growing that gap between our income and our expenses, having that break point of, hey, we're making this much and we're only spending this much. With this much, we can make an impact on our financial future, and we can also make an impact on the world, which is awesome. So we got to a point personally as a couple where we got close to that millionaire net worth and we paid off our mortgage. And I took a look at how much we were actually giving. It was like 1%, something like that. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's fine that we were giving something. But if we want to make an impact on the world and we want to have generosity be a big piece of that, we decided, hey, what can we do to increase that over time? So we wanted to be examples, especially since I was talking to my kids at the time. Hey, you should give some of your money. But I'm like, then I looked at my numbers. I'm like, am I actually giving what I'm saying that the kids should give? So we had a goal as a couple to try to ladder up our giving, because going from 1% to 10% like that is really hard. But just like a lot of people do with investing, saying, oh, I really need to increase my investing, we thought of it in the same fashion as giving. So we laddered up from, I think it was 2018, we were at 1%, and to 2020 we got to 3%, and then over that we got to 5%. And just happened over time. So we started to build that muscle. And so I wanted to do that with my kids too. I wanted to have that type of example where if I'm saying, hey, it's important for you to save some, invest some, and give some, I also wanted to be not a hypocrite and do it myself too. So as I talk to my kids about how to build generational wealth, we talk about it in that 60-40 fashion. So any money that comes into their lives, we split it up between 60% going to spending, smart spending on things that they enjoy, because we want them to be excited about earning money so that they can get the whatever it is, candies, books, Pokemon cards, slime, whatever they're into, and eventually the other things as they get older. 20% would go to investing, and a lot of the conversations that we have with our kids right now are, and we try to keep it simple, investing is for really big things in the future. That's it. Like college, maybe a home purchase in the future, depending on where real estate values are going to go over the next 10, 20 years. And then your retirement, potentially your early retirement. And then 10% would go to saving. And that's for things like, depending on their age, saving up for that first phone, for that first bike, for that first laptop, for the first car, things like that. Things that are in the immediate future, but not right now. And then that last 10%, which is kind of how the conversation started, is around giving. And so we have conversations about giving being in many fashions. That can be to your favorite charities. That can be to your favorite houses of worship. That can also be to just generously giving to your family and friends and neighbors in need. We put a series of dollars in our glove compartment so that we can always have an open hand for somebody who's asking for it, because $1, is it really going to make a huge dent into your life? And $1 and a smile for somebody who's asking for it could make a really big impact on their lives. So we do that with the kids when we're driving around, or if we're going down for a Detroit Lions game, we put some dollars in the pocket. And if somebody's out there asking that needs help, that's a veteran, or somebody who's entertaining us with music or doing some fun things, we always have some money to give, which is a key part of us putting that money away. It helps to create connection. It helps to create some habits of generosity, because there's been scientific studies that have proven if you really want to have a fulfilling, happy life, it's got to have a key portion of generosity and service to others. Because when we live so internally, it's hard for us to experience external joy. So getting out there, using some of your money to support other people, it can be a great way to go. Our kids in the past have done lemonade stands, so where they earn some money. We got impacted by this. This individual came by and just gave our kids $100. They gave them a $100 tip, essentially, for lemonade. And that was like, oh my gosh, this just blew our kids away. And so now we have that goal of maybe not $100 right away, but we at least have $10 bills in our glove compartment of our car. And we always stop at lemonade stands. And that becomes part of our generosity as well. What can we do to give back in the community financially and make an impact? So we have a lot of conversations around generosity, and I think that's my hope, is that they grab onto that one and make that a big part of their lives.
Because you break down your generosity, the 10%, into three parts. You've got the 5% basically to nonprofits, and we're going to link in the show notes your top charities for children, because I really love them. There's 11 there, and they're really good, very well thought out. And they're focused on children, for your kids too, because each of your kids has specific interests in their nonprofit giving. And we want to talk about the impact that they've had. 4% goes to family and friends. how to starting a Roth IRA, a nephew or something like that when they've had a little bit of earned income and get them jump started. And then there's the 1% that's like the $100 tip to shock somebody and pay it forward. There's this book, The Go-Giver, where giving first helps you receive. And your life is much more robust, and your entrepreneurship, your reimbursement will expand because people want to help you back.
Absolutely.
So at any rate, you break those things down, but take us through each of your kids, Zoe and Calvin, and what their passions are for giving.
Yeah, absolutely. So once a quarter, we get together and we have what I like to call the big give, where we get together. And originally, when they were little kids, they would empty their give jar, which is sort of a glass jar with money in it that we put some dollars in from their chore money and things like that. And we would empty it out. And then now they have digital buckets through Ally, which we love Ally. It's fantastic. And so they have a give bucket. So every quarter we look at it, see how much they've accumulated based on the 60-40 generational wealth plan. And we count it up and we say, okay, how much can we give? All right, we've got $12 here, $15 there. Anything that you've got, kids, Mom and I are going to match it because we want to support you in your giving goals. And then we have a conversation with them. What's interesting to you lately? Who do you want to give back to? What are you so grateful for that you have in your life that you'd feel happy to give back to others? And for my son, he would always come back to the fact that I'm really happy for the house that I have. I'm really happy for the roof that I have over my head. And so we found a charity in Detroit called Say Detroit. It's headed by Mitch Albom, great author who's got a lot of impactful stories that have helped a lot of people in Metro Detroit. And so at 4 years old, I'll share this one story. At 4 years old, he donated $8 of his chore money, and we matched it, so it became $16 to Mitch Albom's charity, Say Detroit. We wrote a little note in there for our gift saying, this is from Calvin Hill. At 4 years old, this is my $8 for my chore money. Not only did he give that back and feel good about it, but we got contacted back by Mitch Albom's people who invited him on his national radio show during the holidays. And he got to be interviewed by best-selling author Mitch Albom on his radio show. And the three of us, my wife and I and him, are sitting there being interviewed, and they're just talking about this story of generosity and how not only, Calvin, do we give the roofs for these houses that you want to help out, but we give the whole house, and we help people get back on their feet. And my son's going to remember that for the rest of his life, not only because I'm going to talk about it all the time in front of him, but we got it on video. And it's also just a core part of who he is. So I think for Calvin, it's about helping people have that home, feeling that sense of warmth when you're at home and you're with your family that really impacts him. Now, for my daughter, she loves animals, and she always has. Every time it came back to the which one do you want to give to, she loves her cat. She loves to give back to the cat shelter. She loves to give to WWF, World Wildlife Foundation. So for her, it's a big call to her heart as animals. So she's always giving to these organizations as well, and follow her up with some great marketing material, send her some calendars that she's got on the wall. So it ends up being sort of a community where you are a part of giving towards an organization and helps them get some sort of kinship to wanting to give more. So those are just a couple examples of what we've done over the years, starting off with just the give jars, moving on to the digital buckets of giving.
Oh, I think that's so sweet. I just love the idea that you are thinking of generational wealth and passing on the generosity gene versus just the dollars and cents. And a lot of times when people talk about creating a legacy and generational wealth, they're talking about dollars. And this is just so much more impactful. It's going to follow them throughout their whole life.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. And it is important, Jackie, to talk about the dollars too. And we do that a lot. We end up talking about money quite a bit because I think the big folly for a lot of families that do end up getting a lot of wealth, and my wife and I talk about this all the time, hey, we've done really well. We hope we don't do wrong by our kids so it just kind of fades, is having those conversations, is communicating. Because if you just plop a pile of cash in front of them at a certain point, whether they're in their 20s or after we pass away, with no real education on how to use it, then you're probably going to fail, right? So we are doing our best as much as we can as parents to try to educate them on how to use it and what the purpose of the money is, because without purpose, it ends up getting flittered away, you know? So we try to have a lot of those conversations at home.
Yeah, I mean, we do the same thing, and we do it through a donor advised fund. We created one of those, donating appreciated shares to a Fidelity donor advised fund, which we support. And we have the big give on Giving Tuesday every year and around Thanksgiving. Throughout the year, we kind of accumulate charities that we run across and make small donations to them. And then we go through that list, and then we all decide, okay, where do we want to make the big give? And we let our kids, basically Douglas and Jacob, pick their charities that they want to give to, and they're going to inherit this donor advised fund, and it'll be kind of a mini family foundation that will hopefully promote generational giving.
That's incredible. I love that. That's a great tradition, and they're going to remember that forever.
Yeah, and you had a recent episode on your show with your son Calvin, and you break down your show into things that you talk about, an interview with a guest, and then you bring your kids on, and they're young. They're sort of 10 and 12, something like that.
That's right.
And you've been doing this giving thing since they were very young, obviously. But you had a recent conversation with Calvin about karma. And this was moving, brought me almost to tears. And you've been generous to give us this clip, and we're going to play it as the end of our show today so that we can see how being an intentional parent can really impact your kids. It's not just about teaching them to do their laundry at age 7. It's about teaching them how to, which your kids have done. I think my wife still does my kids' laundry, so we didn't necessarily get that one right. But I've been your show is not just about money. It is marriage, kids, and money, that's a big part of society. That's a big audience to take care of. And it gives you a lot to talk about. And Jackie, do you want to talk about this little clip that we're going to play here in a few moments?
Yeah, before we do that, Andy, if someone wants to get in touch with you or if they want to learn more about what you're doing and what you talk about, how do they find you?
Absolutely, yeah. If you're listening to this fine podcast, you can just type in Marriage, Kids, and Money in your favorite podcast player. If you're more interested in the conversation around generational wealth, I created a course called Make My Kid a Millionaire. Obviously, it has a lot to do with building wealth, but also generosity. And we have a free section of that course at makemykidamillionaire.com. You can sort of check it out. It's about the 60-40 generational wealth plan. So again, you could go to makemykidamillionaire.com for that resource.
There you go. Because this guy has a lot of platforms over here.
I'm crazy.
That's for sure. We will have it all in the show notes so that people can find you. And I have seen your trajectory since 2020, and you've gone like just straight up. But the clip that we are going to share, with your permission, is when you, with all your platforms and everything, the fact that you brought your son in, Calvin, to have this discussion with him. You made him a part of the podcast. You talk about karma. You talk about generosity. And it's just so, how old is he?
Calvin's 10, yeah.
So Calvin's 10. It was so wonderful. And like Bill said, it touched both of our hearts. So we know that our audience will enjoy it as well. So how did Calvin feel about that episode after it aired?
I think he felt good about it. We end up listening to the car on the way to camp or school, and he's more like his mother, where he doesn't really like to see himself on camera or listen to himself afterward, but he's happy to do it in the moment. But the conversation really felt good. I think that he talks about karma more with his friends now than before, and I think he kind of gets it. There's sort of an epiphany moment, I think, in some of the conversations we've had where he's like, I get it.
Well, you mentioned in the clip that giving is a pebble in a pond, or your son says that, which is, you didn't say that, he said that. So we encourage our audience to stay with the show. It's running a little long, but you're not going to want to miss this clip where you learn not only how to be an intentional parent, but intentional with your money, your giving, and learning how paying it forward, you can impact tens of thousands of people, just like Calvin did when he was 4 years old. So thank you, Andy, for being on the show with us today. It's a pleasure to talk with you. We've learned a lot, and I've learned a lot how to be more intentional with my parenthood, even as my kids were 25. You're never too old to start. You're never too old to learn some of the lessons you brought by your kids early in life. So you're a great example to your audience. You're a great example to me. Jackie, any final thoughts?
Yeah, let's go to the clip so we can leave you with a smile.
Thank you both.
All right. Thank you, Andy. We'll talk to you again soon. We got plenty more to talk about. Enjoy Calvin.
And to help me read the good word, I'm joined by my son, Calvin Hill. Welcome back to the show, Calvin Hill.
Bleh.
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 How's it going, buddy?
Bah.
How's it going?
Quack.
Quack. Are you a duck now?
Quack.
Quack, quack, quack. Well, my quacker, will you help me read this awesome good news story?
Quacky yes.
Quacky, yes. Here we go.
I just went to buy a Samsung washer and dryer from a guy and he was asking $500. I told him I just had a kid and if he could take $400, I'd be really grateful.
It worked great. I opened up the dryer to check the lint filter, and I was shocked to find my $400 was sitting in there. I got a message from him saying, check the dryer, a gift for the new baby.
Man, words cannot describe how grateful I am right now. I feel so blessed right now. I felt I had to share a big shout out to the man David. Thank you so much.
Very cool. So yeah, this is just a post that this guy, Chris Blaze, put on his Instagram of a really nice gesture. So he went over to some guy's house to buy a washer dryer, and he negotiated to $400 because he was having a kid. He needed to save up some money. And the guy, David, gave it to him for free, left him the $400. Isn't that cool? What do you think of David?
So nice.
That is nice. Do you think that's that type of generosity you like to see in the world?
Yeah,
Yeah.
because if I saw someone that had a kid
Mm-hmm.
and someone was selling a dryer for $500,
Mm-hmm.
or I was selling the dryer for
Yeah,
$500.
You were selling it like on Facebook Marketplace or something
Yeah.
like that. Yeah.
If someone asked if they could buy it for like $400, I would say, yeah, sure.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would leave them like $200.
$200. I mean, yeah, it's a lot of money. I mean, I know you're 10 years old. I know you have some money in your give bucket, but
Yeah,
$400 is a lot of money, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
So I would give them like 200 or 300 back.
Oh, that's so nice of you to consider, buddy. You know, this post we just read,
Mm-hmm.
it was viewed and liked by over 200,000 people.
What?
Yeah, on Instagram. Isn't that cool?
Well, I've seen bigger.
I'm sure you've
views
seen
and,
bigger.
Yeah.
Of course. I mean,
But
you're on
what?
YouTube. You see these gaming channels with millions of views and
Yeah,
millions of
I know.
subscribers, right?
But
Well,
what?
anyway, 200,000 people, that's a lot, right? So I have a question for you. Do you think David's generosity, what he did for this man, do you think that affected more people than just Chris?
Yes.
Can you tell me why?
It like says something to people that like they should do something like that too.
Remember when we talked about karma?
Yeah, karma.
Yeah, tell people about karma.
Not like the karma where someone punches you and then they fall down.
Yeah, different karma. Talk to us about this other
Yeah.
karma.
So it's like a different kind of karma. So if you haven't seen the episode, you should check it out. But anyways, so karma is like when somebody does something nice. It's like a ripple effect when you drop something in the water and then it ripples around. So when you do something nice, like if someone drops something like their books and you help them pick it up, other people could see that and spread good kindness throughout the world.
I love that.
So
buddy.
it would like spread.
So they saw somebody do something nice, and then they wanted to do something nice because they saw it.
Yeah.
So potentially, I'm not saying this is happening, but 200,000 people saw this cool thing. Do you think maybe 200,000 people might want to do something nice for people that day?
Yeah.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah, that's real cool.
It is cool. It's pretty impactful. I want you to tell people the story of the lemonade stand that you had when somebody came and gave you and Zoe a really big tip. Can you tell people about that?
Yeah. So we were just doing our normal lemonade stand, like on a Sunday or Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
And then we saw this car. He pulled up, and then we said, "Do you want lemonade?" And then he was like, no, I don't want any. And then we were like, okay. And then like waited for other people to come. But then he came up and gave us $100.
Wow.
And he didn't even want any lemonade.
What did he say to you guys when he gave you the 100?
I don't remember.
You don't remember? I do remember. He said, I think it's so cool that you guys are out here selling lemonade. There's not enough kids who do this. I just want to support you for being entrepreneurs. Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
And now, guess what?
What?
We're sharing that generosity story with everybody who's listening to this podcast. Yeah. Do you think the people who are listening to this podcast might...
Also,
go ahead. Sorry.
We started like giving not like $100 tips to like every lemonade stand we see, but we give like $5 if they're selling it for $1.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, remember when we saw that snow cone stand?
Yeah,
that was cool.
That was cool.
Yeah, they had this little machine, and I think we gave them $5. They were selling it for $1.
And why did we want to do that?
Because that guy gave us 100.
Exactly. It's like karma, man. We wanted to keep it going, right?
Yeah.
Well, this is fun for me to talk about with you. Thank you so much for doing this, buddy.
So, Bill, as you know, we cannot do this show without our amazing staff and the people that help us put this on. So our social media is Diana Falk, our editor, Fritz Bassard, and show notes are done by Sarah von Sternberg. We love them and they keep us going.
Yeah, I mean, this show wouldn't have the quality it has without our folks, our peeps. And we'd also like to give you a few calls to action for the show. We love our community and we hope you love us back. If you want to support the show and what we're doing, you can do that at Buy Me a Coffee, which is a platform that allows you to virtually say thank you if you get value from our content. The link is in the show notes, or you can head over to our website at CatchingUpToFi.com and click on the Support the Podcast tab at the top right. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Catching Up to Fi. We would appreciate it if you could leave us a 5-star review so that our message can reach others.
While we are financial educators, and I'm a financial professional that loves to teach, our content is for general education and information purposes only. We are not providing financial, legal, or tax advice. Always do your own research or consult a professional before making important decisions.
We'll see you next time on Catching Up to Fi.